Welcome into Double A Baseball. Adam Oppenheim with Alex Hynes here on Thursday, February 12th. We're finishing up last week's episode talking about some of the teams who we think won or lost the offseason or other teams that we just want to discuss. But let's start off with some news that we've seen over the past 7 days. Let's start with maybe the biggest one. Corbin Carroll broke his hamate bone in his right hand, undergoing surgery today. Diamondbacks don't know if he's going to be ready for opening day.
Yeah, I mean, if you're watching this, you probably have managed to break your handmade bone just by paying attention to baseball. That's how it feels. I mean, Carroll, Francisco Lindor has had a hamate injury, and Jackson Holliday's getting his hamate bone removed. I think it is the report I have here.
I guess that's a thing.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, hamate bone removal surgery. Jackson Holliday's having it as well, which means that all three are going to miss opening day. All three are very significant players. It's very random to have sort of an injury issue like that be reported the moment you report to spring training, basically, because pitchers and catchers are reporting and a few others have been trickling in. You'd think that this would have been known a bit earlier, especially given that hamate bone injuries I feel like have been more tied to swinging. Um, so, presumably either they haven't started really swinging, they have. I'm confused by the timeline to have three guys of their caliber all be suffering from the same thing this early, but it's obviously going to be a tough blow for all three teams, knowing that hey, you're going to be down two superstars, and then Jackson Holiday was expected to be a starter still. So I mean that's something to be mindful of, certainly.
Well, I have two things on this. I think first is, Jeff Passan says it's more about the long-term effects, which, if you can't gain your power back for a few months, that is really tough. And obviously, you need your hands to swing. And the other portion of this is there seems to be an annoyance amongst fans when players get to spring training and they have an injury and it causes them to miss time. Because a lot of fans say, for good reason, why didn't you just, get surgery after the playoffs? And a lot of times, players want, like some sort of swelling to go down, for example, like a shoulder injury, and they don't want surgery to happen. And they wait for, the swelling to go down. And then suddenly they feel something that's not good here in February and March. And suddenly your timeline is pushed into, the regular season. And that's where it's really tough because fans have to look at it for the perspective of players. You don't want surgery if you don't have to have it.
Right. And also, I mean, we're at the point now where for most of your offseason, you're probably, at least for hitters more so than pitchers who will continue to have their scheduled throwing program. But, if you're a hitter, yes, you probably get some work in the offseason, swinging just wherever you go to get that in. But, it now is the point where you're probably starting to ramp up a little bit before you get into spring training. And so that's where you're going to get a lot more stress when you're getting back into the full swing of things after having maybe not 3 months fully off, but you're not playing every day. You're not swinging at live pitches. So I think that definitely will play a part. And obviously, I'm sure part of it's just once you report, you're going to get your sort of um, maybe not a full physical, but sort of just the team doctors are actually going to check on you, and that may reveal a bit more that you may not have noticed, or say, all right, hey, we actually need you to address this, not just you know hope that it changes.
Right. Yeah. That's a tough balance. Let's hit on a couple other quick things. Verlander back to the Tigers, 1 year deal. Anything on that?
I mean, I do think it's cool that he's going back to Detroit. I do think that this is a also slightly it's one of those where it's like, yes, it's amazing he's going back to Detroit. He's going to retire as a Tiger, whether he goes into the Hall of Fame as a Tiger, who knows? But I mean, he is going back to where he really, he started, where he broke out. The only concerns I have with that is when you're doing that on a team that's supposed to be competitive, there's always opportunities for that to be a messy end. at times, especially given that he hasn't really shown that he's going to be, you know, necessarily better than than their normal rotation options. So I don't know. It could be great, could be a fun story, could be a really disappointing end.
Yeah, that's honestly fair to say. Chris Bassitt to the Orioles, 18.5 million. I mean, I think this quite an interesting move because Bassett at least fits into the rotation. Um, I know they picked up Shane Baz, and they still have Zach Eflin. Um, but still, I mean, they're gonna need guys to pitch a good amount of innings. I don't feel awful, honestly, about this Orioles rotation this year. Of course, that's relying a lot on Trevor Rogers, who had an absolute career year last year, and Kyle Bradish coming back for a full season. I honestly like what Kyle Bradish brings to the table. A lot of people, frankly, don't watch the Orioles, and I don't blame them. But Kyle Bradish is a really good pitcher, and I think at least a couple years ago he was in the Cy Young race. So
Yeah, I mean, he was a game one starter. I remember when they had that like sort of not a curse breaking playoff appearance, but it felt like it was, firmly stepping foot out of the bog they had been stuck in for, 5 or so years at the cellar of the division. Yeah, I'm curious. I think we could talk about this a little bit more when we're talking about off seasons. So I'll hold off any of my extra thoughts until then. Let's go to the Red Sox though. Caleb Durbin was one of those Rookie of the Year finalists for the Brewers. They had so many really good young players that made their debut last year. Isaac Collins, they already dealt him off to Kansas City. And now Durbin goes to the Red Sox for Kyle Harrison uh, in a move that just felt like a bit of a head scratcher almost for both teams. I understand some of it, but it just felt like an odd move to be making at this point in the offseason.
I think it was a move that I would guess the Red Sox called Milwaukee about. I don't see it being the other way around, really, because I mean, the Red Sox were in dire need of a second baseman. I mean, Romy Gonzalez was a really good hitter last year, but Durbin on the defensive end is a giant upgrade. I mean, you give away Harrison 'cause I guess the Red Sox just had too many pitchers, at least young guys that if you're thinking about Connolly Early and Peyton Tolley, was Kyle Harrison gonna pitch over those guys? I mean, those guys as rookies, Kyle Harrison didn't even get in above them last year. When they were struggling for pitching, Kyle Harrison was still in AAA.
And I mean, I do find it interesting because obviously, looking from the Brewers' perspective, yes, they needed some pitching because they've got a decent amount of young pitching depth in their system, but you obviously trade away Freddie Peralta. That was a deal that is born out of just not knowing that they're not going to be able to extend him and maximizing on his value while they could.
Right.
But that obviously meant that a team that was right, and the best record in the National League last year, and had such a phenomenal year despite the odds, got rid of one of their best pieces, and now they're really having to make up. I don't think Kyle Harrison felt like he was their price range, so to speak, in terms of trade value.
I mean,
They were,
does he even fit into the rotation though?
well, and that's my sort of concern with it is I don't love Caleb Durbin. I mean, he is I think 5'7" corner infielder or middle infielder,
Yeah.
depending on where you want to put him. That doesn't hit the ball hard. Um, he is a very Milwaukee Brewer player if you look at him in that
Dude,
respect, where
yeah,
he's
look at
going to
his
be
Savant
pesky.
page. My goodness.
Doesn't chase, doesn't swing and miss, but he's not going to hit more than 10 homers in a season, at least um, probably not many times in his career. And I mean, I actually looking at that depth chart now for the Brewers, you are kind of right. I mean, I think their top four is pretty clear: Woodruff, Missorowski, Quinn Priester, Chad Patrick. Now, obviously, that's a lot of young talent to be relying on. I mean, Missorowski in his second year, Quinn Priester is going to be starting, in
I'll
his
believe in
third
Priester though.
season. No, I believe in Priester the same way I believe in Chad Patrick, who had a pretty good year as a rookie last year as well. But that's a lot of production to be asking when you're trying to be a competitive team, combined with the fact that Woodruff is still coming off of injury. Um,
That's
I
right.
don't
Yeah.
think Kyle Harrison's the right kind of guy. If they made a move for a similar value pitcher, but someone who had a bit more experience under their belt at the major league level, a guy who's maybe played 5 years at the bigs, but also is just a mid 4 ERA kind of guy, maybe, you know, I could see it a bit more just for this season. But I understand trying to find something out of a young player, trade, two 25-year-olds basically.
I mean, I guess the biggest thing for Harrison is he's really only shown a good fastball at the major league level. Doesn't have like any secondary pitches that have been successful. And on the other side, you mentioned it with Durbin, no power, and the Red Sox lineup already doesn't have a lot of home run pop. So, I mean, I don't know if you can call that there's a winner in this trade. Um,
I
but
don't think we'll really know for
I
for
mean,
a much longer time.
yeah, it's just I don't think it moves the needle for any either team. I'll say that. That's what I'll leave it at. Last guy, I think we want to talk. Well, we'll talk about Max Muncy extension. I mean, he's a beast. We'll talk about
One year
Castellanos.
deal.
Yeah, Castellanos released. I think that came out today.
Yeah.
I mean, man, deep left field.
Yeah, I mean that will no longer make it a 4-0 ball game for anybody involved. I mean it kind of makes sense. The amount he was getting paid was, I mean, it made sense at the time when they first signed him. He was coming off of that great split season between the Tigers and the Cubs, signed with Philly, had some decent years at the front end, but I mean, it just didn't end well for him. I mean, bad defensive outfielder. You've already got a DH in Kyle Schwarber. It just didn't make a ton of sense, and he was a below average, basically a below average player or about average player in the last 2 years combined. He only really didn't even have a good year. Actually, it was Cincinnati where he was at before, where he had the real good season to get the contract.
Yeah, I'd say a below average player in general.
Yeah,
I
no
don't there
defense.
there was not a worse defensive outfielder than Nick Castellanos, who was, played the minimum amount of innings. I mean, he would just take
But he doesn't commit errors now, Adam. What are you talking
yeah,
about?
he doesn't just drop the ball. Congrats, man.
It's
Yeah,
better
but
than one outfielder I know.
yeah, funny. It was challenging his arm. People do that all the time. Didn't have great range. Had terrible routes to the ball.
And I
I
mean,
just
he hits, I'm trying to do the math here,
I
10,
mean, you
20,
think about it
30.
over the regular season and the playoffs, how many times a ball goes into like the right field corner and people think about, can we extend this to a double? With Castellanos, you're thinking about three when it's in that corner. That's the
Yeah.
problem. You think about it getting an extra base almost every game. That matters a lot. That translates to wins, and it's not why the Phillies lost in the playoffs, but he certainly didn't help. Has
Yeah.
not hit the ball well. Strikes out a lot. Hits into a lot of double plays. Man, he had to be near the top of the league for the past few years in double plays hit into.
And I mean, the big thing about him was, yes, I mean, he's a home run hitter. He only hit like 85 homers across 4 years, which for what you're paying him is not a lot. And the thing that really earned him a lot of the plaudits beyond the home run power was just his ability to split gaps. He had that 58 double season that I was talking about between the Cubs and the Tigers, but he had one extra season in the 40s, and he was really constantly in the 30 doubles marks year in, year out. And he did that only twice with the Phillies in 4 years, and it just never felt like he was doing enough um, in a lineup that was so heavily based around power hitting that you kind of needed everybody to be able to hit, and he just wasn't doing it, and it felt like he was getting frustrated. The fans were getting frustrated with him, and at this point, the Phillies
Yeah.
are kind of in decision making mode because they just gave Schwarber a big deal, but Harper is now getting older. JT Romuto, they bring him back, but again, he's not getting any younger. It's a team that really feels like if they are going to try and compete and actually win the World Series they've been threatening at the last, 5 years, they've got to cut dead weight. And that's what they're doing basically.
I mean, it's the one move you look at. What was he getting paid 20, 25 million? I think something in that range. And that
Something of
was
that.
you mentioned it was after a great season with the Reds looking here now above 3 WAR. That was his best wins above replacement season. So it was fortunate timing. I mean, he did have some clutch hits in the postseason. I think that's what overshadows, maybe not great regular seasons, but last year all around it was a down year. So, and that was the
Yeah.
decision to move on from
Tw-
him.
That's
Um,
20 million a year that he was getting paid, and which was at going into this year, he was the fifth highest player on the team, behind only Nola, Trey Turner, Bryce Harper, and Zach Wheeler. So, I mean, they were not getting top five player on the team production. I mean, heck, I guess this year Kyle Schwarber is actually getting paid less, and he will get paid more. But still, the point is he was getting paid way too much on a deal that just didn't fit him.
Yeah, Philly still got some work to do. I'll say that, just in
Oh
terms of
yeah.
and of their lineup, especially. Let's talk about just offseason talk as a whole. What team stands out to you? Good, bad, maybe just an interesting offseason.
Um, let's see. I actually, you know what? Just because we've been on the Phillies conversation, let's actually just stick with the Phillies for a moment here. I
Okay.
mean, they did not much, and that I think is something certainly to that of concern to me. I think we're talking about a team that had a concerning offseason. I'd say it would be the Phillies. You know, yeah, you bring Schwarber back, but their only real other major ad, they bring in Brad Keller in the bullpen, who, is a good back end bullpen arm. But I know they've got a really strong, they've had a strong team basically for the last 5 years. But obviously, the Zach Wheeler injury leaves a lot of questions. And there's still really, you know, I don't see anything that convinces me that this is any more than they have been in the past, which hasn't been enough, um, to get past, um, a couple teams in the playoffs. They'll make the playoffs, I think. They've got a team good enough for that, but I just don't see a team that guarantees to me that they can make that run. And actually, losing Ranger Suarez is another example of depth in their rotation with, again, Wheeler being hurt after Nola and Christopher Sanchez. Where are you going to go?
And Noah didn't even have a great year last
No,
season.
not at all.
So
And it's even your Aaron Nola, man. I don't know how to
yeah,
explain it.
I mean, I'll say
I will.
this: it's not guaranteed for the Phils to make the playoffs. Um, Not only because of the division they're in, but you look at the NL Central, it's dangerous. I mean,
Yeah.
uh, it helps. But, well, it hurts more like, the Cubs and the Brewers battling it out. Maybe another team sneaks in there. Probably not. Um, but yeah, the Phillies just didn't do enough to offset their subtractions. You mentioned Ranger Suarez. I'll mention Matt Strom. I mean, he was a guy who pitched in relief for them a bunch. And the best few seasons of his career came the past 3 years. And you lose him in the bullpen. You add like Adolis Garcia, but I mean, not exactly the biggest fan of him at this point in his career.
No.
He doesn't really move the needle at all. You re-sign your guys, obviously. But I mean, who's the name that elevates this Phillies team? They got worse. The Dodgers added Kyle Tucker. That's who you're competing with if you want to look at the NL. Everyone is chasing the Dodgers. And they didn't go
Well,
one step forward. I would say they took 2 steps backwards.
yeah, and even within your own division, I mean, again, I feel pretty good that the Phillies should make the playoffs. They should be able to win 90 games, or at least, the 85 to 90 that it would take to get a wild card spot. But you mention it, the fact that last year there were two teams out of the Central making it, that cuts one of your wild card spots. Um, you know, Obviously,
Padres,
the Padres are still probably primed enough to make the playoffs or at least compete. And now you've got to compete with the Mets. And there's no guarantee that, well, I don't love what the Braves have done. I don't think the Braves have done a lot either. I feel like they've kind of done the exact same thing the Phillies have done, which is just sort of stand pat and just hope that injuries resolve themselves. magically and that you're going to be competing. But if the Braves put out a decent year, you're talking about a three-team race in the East. I still would probably favor the Mets out of those three teams just based on pure talent. And then, you know, is there that surprise team? Do the Reds then compete for the a wild card spot? Do you get a surprise run out of somebody else? That
How
means
about
that
like the
you're no longer
Marlins?
guaranteed. I'm not going to go that far, but still, I think that you need to get better, and the Phillies are relying on a team that was great in 2023, 2022, and still is good. But again, we're talking about guys that are starting to get older. You're talking about a lot of players in their 30s. You're going to have to figure something out. And I just don't think that they've really got enough of that youth injection either that other teams can rely upon, like, say, the Mets are getting in their rotation with young players or elsewhere across the league.
Now, I want to hit on the Mets. I mean, they made a
I was
lot of
going to go
good.
to the Mets too.
Yeah. I mean, Bo Bichette, big one. Freddie Peralta, big one. Luis Robert, something. Marcus Simeon, it's all right. Devin Williams, who I guess was MLB Network's reliever of the year for the second straight year. I don't know what games they were watching, but Devin Williams, he pitched well at the end of last year. I'll say that.
I don't hate that move either, but they're making moves. That's
Yeah,
the big thing for me.
yeah, they took another guy from the Yankees, Luke Weaver. I mean, they have guys who have a good amount of MLB experience, and especially playing in those high leverage situations, which is not super fun in New York if you're not used to those bright lights.
And I as much as I was kind of unsure about some of the moves they made. Again, like Marcus Simeon is not a guy that I rate very highly for 2026. Um, but and they gave up Brandon Nimmo, who again, that part of that is definitely just contractual stuff as well, taking on a guaranteed contract instead of giving out the long-term deal to Nimmo. I don't think he was on a long-term deal. Maybe he was. Actually, I think he was, but still, trading salaries basically. Um, bring in Luis Robert, banking on a revival elsewhere. I mean, I've got no problem with that. And, you know, now they can also, if they really want to, make a deal using Vientos or Beatty, because one
Yeah.
of them right now is going to be squeezed out of the lineup. Roster resource at Fangraphs has it being Vientos who's out. And I figure he'd probably be more likely to get dealt. And you never know if that can help strengthen their pitching staff, which I mean, the rotation. Freddie Peralta. I like the move. I really do. I love Nolan McLean. I do think that this is a team that is. They've got their ace in Freddie Peralta, and then they've got a bunch of guys that are like 3 to 5 starters without necessarily having a clear two.
I think Kodai Senga is the big question mark because we've
Yeah,
seen him be able to pitch at an elite level. The rest of the guys, I mean, you're not expecting Clay Holmes to be a number one or a number two. David Pearson, same thing. Sean Manaea, same thing. But Kodai Senga, I mean, how many times did he try to come back from an injury last year? Like,
and it felt like he got sped up trying to in the recovery at times, which I think was a product of the Mets just having rotation
no,
woes throughout.
right. And then they were just bringing young guys up, which, could work for some people. I mean, it's fun for the fans, but you don't exactly want to just be tossing up guys from AAA because you got no one left to pitch. So, I mean, the Mets are an interesting spot. That's interesting you pointed out the Vientos and Beatty thing because both those guys have, I think they would try to trade one of them. And they're
And
both
they have
solid
value.
players who could help.
Yeah.
I mean, Vientos had some electric moments last year. So,
I could see kind of this isn't a one for one. This is probably a bit unfair, more so unfair to Mark Vientos, but the same way that last year the Dodgers made that trade for Miguel or trading Miguel Vargas away to the White Sox, where he got everyday playing time because he was sort of in a logjam in that Dodger system, or even they got rid of Michael Bush to the Cubs. And got a couple good prospects out of it. So whether you're getting prospects or packaging Vientos with a pretty decent farm system they've shown the willingness to do it. They did it with Luis Angel Acuna, the guy who, regardless of what Chris Getz tries to sell
which
to you
hitter?
folks, he is not a switch hitter. I want to be clear on that. Chris Getz has said that 4 times, and he is not a switch hitter, which, you know, Chris Getz, the right-handed hitter.
Yeah. That was funny. Let's talk White Sox. They actually made moves, which I know is probably pretty surprising to a lot of people. Obviously, you look at the big one, Murakami. I know a lot of people not a fan of his, profile as an MLB player. If you're the White Sox, why not take a shot on some guy who can supposedly launch the ball? Oh, he strikes out too much. This isn't a White Sox team that's contending next year, so who really cares? Um, Austin Hayes, I mean, is a decent player.
Certainly a
Yeah, I
guy.
mean, on the field, so, but yeah, I mean, they made moves that at least improve their roster and showing they're trying to go in a direction which is, get rid of some of the veteran players and try to actually rebuild the team. Like, what are we doing here, keeping Luis Robert on the team for that long? Like, you don't need a Michael A. Taylor. Obviously he just retired. I'm looking at it now. I didn't even remember that. But you don't need him blocking reps from some of your younger players.
Yeah, and I think this is where this could be a team that, I mean, I think back to, not my childhood, but like slightly later on with the Cubs in like 2012, or 2011 when it was, a team that was full of guys that, man, they could be fun. They're gonna win 70 games, but they could be fun. The White Sox may not get to 70, but they'll be a team that has some intrigue. And again, Murakami is actually kind of a perfect fit. I know we talked about it a bit at the time that short-term deal, if he works out well, they could trade
Yeah.
him because he's not a young player coming over the same way that others were. But, trade him away and you could make some moves there. And if he doesn't work, I mean, you're wasting what, like it was like 18 million or something, on this year and next year. You've got to spend money anyway. At least you tried.
I mean, they still have intriguing players: Chase Mydroff, Kyle
Yeah,
Teel,
and
Colson
Colson
Montgomery.
Montgomery,
I
pride
mean,
of near Huntingburg, Indiana, Southern Indiana.
there you go. That was nice. That was a nice pull. But Colson Montgomery was a guy that people didn't even know last year. But quick rise through the ranks, first round pick a few years back, was really good. I mean, Brooks Baldwin's an interesting player, I guess, at the bottom of their lineup. But at least they're young players. Like, you don't just want to see veterans sitting there. That's all I'm saying. And at
Well,
least
and
the
that was
White
the
Sox.
problem that was the problem they had too. They had so many guys that were they may not have been really old players, but they had like 27-year-old guys that just didn't have that potential in their starting lineup. I mean, or they were holding on to Yohan Moncada for too long.
Oh,
After that experience didn't work.
here we go. I'll
It,
give you
okay.
a couple years ago. Andrew Vaughn, Nicky Lopez, Paul DeYoung, Andrew Bentendi's still there, obviously. Luis Robert, Eloy Jimenez. I mean, I just like I don't understand. Like Gavin Sheets. What year is this from? 2024. So this is a couple years back, I think. But those
Yeah,
are the guys that are just like blocking Martin Maldonado. Like, why? Why?
man, he can hit 180 for me any day.
It just all these players are just veterans, and they revamped it for the young players. The crochet trade obviously helps.
Right.
Um, so yeah,
It will be interesting. They're not going to win a lot of games, but they at least are showing forward progress, which I mean, we've seen teams dead in the water for too long.
yeah. Well, I think we got time to talk about maybe one or two more teams here with about six to go. Any other teams stick out, good, bad, in the middle?
Um, the main one I was let's go actually, let's go to Baltimore. Let's go to
I like
Baltimore
that. I like that.
because it was interesting because MLB Network kind of actually I saw a tweet earlier from them sort of touting the, the spending they made. And they spent, they made moves. I'm still not no, I don't know what to think because I'm not really all that sold. Like, yes, the offense was bad last year, and they bring in, Pete Alonso, and I do think the offense was going to be better anyway. I mean, they played so poorly that I don't think that you're going to get those percentile outcomes from, guys around their team. I'm not sold on that rotation still. I mean, yes, Bradish is back. Dean Kramer was another guy who had some decent time who was back, but is Rodgers going to be a number one? I mean, Bassitt ended up getting relegated to the bullpen in Toronto. He was fine, but I mean, again, he's not who he once was. And Shane Baz started great last year, fell apart. There's a lot of these guys that just feels like you're banking on a lot of upside, and if they all hit, great. If not, which I'm not sold on a lot of them, I'm not sure that this rotation is going to do enough to make up for any of the improvements that Pete Alonso and just natural increases in the offense bring.
You talk about a guy like Shane Baz. He got rocked last year for a good portion of the year. I mean, he
I
was giving up
recall.
home run, a lot of home runs. Zach Eflin, think about a couple years back, he was right near like all-star status, and then it's just not been as good. Hasn't been healthy also, if I remember correctly. He had a pretty serious injury. Um, but yeah, you look at the lineup. The lineup is obviously going to be better. Samuel Basayo had a really, solid rookie season. Maybe you're looking for more things for him. Problem is he's probably already gonna become a DH now that Alonso's at first. So, I mean, kind of relegating your guy to a designated hitter isn't the best thing. But I mean, supposedly he can swing the bat. I mean, we saw it a few times last year, hoping for more of that this season. You added Taylor Ward. He's projected right now by Fangraphs to be at the top of the lineup. I mean, the rest of them are just moves around the edges. Ryan Helsley, I think, is a good addition to the bullpen. But I think the problem is this Orioles team. They are competing in the AL East. We say it every year. It's a really tough division because besides the Rays, everyone else in that division is usually gonna spend, or they're gonna try to get better. Maybe not the Blue Jays in the past, but the Blue Jays now they're certainly looking to get back to where they were last year. The Yankees are obviously gonna spend. The Red Sox, I mean, their ownership group could get a lot of hate. They're still gonna spend. Um, so those teams, they're always gonna usually spend more than you. It's gonna be tough to compete in that division. You're not, playing in the AL Central.
And it just feels like there's so much reliance on upside here. And again, we saw a couple years ago the fruits of the tank that they had, where they have all these top prospects, Gunnar Henderson's, Adley Rutschman's, who have made impacts, and you've got a couple other guys, Kauser hopefully back healthy. Dylan Beavers is another guy that's projected to actually make
Yep.
the opening day roster after getting just a cup of coffee last year. Jordan Westberg, they're hoping will take that extra step back to where he was 2 years ago. But it feels like a team that, unlike some of the other competitive teams we're talking about, they're relying on things to go right, and you have to. I understand that. And again, you mentioned that the spending gap is going to be there, but I just felt like this was a team that should have then spent a little bit more. They were a team that really felt like they needed to go after a top of the line starter, and they didn't. And I think that was what was concerning to me a bit more, because the offense I expect to still be good, and especially with the addition of Alonso, but there hasn't been a confident Orioles rotation in quite some time.
Yeah.
Really,
Good point.
that can compete for a playoff spot and playoff wins.
Yeah, that's a good point, honestly, if you compare, the rotations of at least what the Yankees and the Red Sox have right now. It's tough. I mean, a lot of times it comes down to pitching. I mean, Alonso's a good ad. He's gonna give you a whole lot of homers, but can you prevent other teams from scoring a lot of runs? And I'm not gonna say their bullpen is extremely good. I mean, it's fine, but it's not anything to write home about. So, I mean, their lineup's gonna have to do a lot of heavy lifting. I think Colton Cowser could have a bounce back season. That would be big for them. I mean, they just have so many young players. Even like Jeremiah Jackson, he was sitting in like the two hole for them last season. So, I mean, I think you at least have guys who have experience at the major league level. A lot of these guys, and now they're having their full season, maybe a more competent roster. And we'll see how it goes for the O's. I mean, it should be fun. I know there's a ton of other teams we could have talked about, but we're currently running out of time. Alex, you got any more? You just
No, I think we covered some of the main ones, and we can get into some more of this later in the spring training sort of segment of the season,
yeah.
as we look ahead to teams we actually like, just entirely 1 through 9 in the lineup and whatnot.
Yeah, hopefully we'll have some more news in the coming weeks so we can get another show out for you guys. Otherwise, no reason to do a show if there's not a whole lot of new information because once the season comes, we'll be pumping out content here on the Double A Baseball YouTube page. So that's going to wrap it up here on this episode of Double A Baseball. For my partner, Alex Hynes, I'm Adam Oppenheim. We'll see you next time on Double A Baseball.